If you've been around this channel for any length of time, you already know how I feel about Nextcloud. I think it's unnecessarily difficult to get set up, and keeping it running efficiently is an even bigger pain. And about a year ago, I did a live stream where I tried to work through the official documentation to see if the setup process had gotten any better, and spoiler alert, it hadn't. Even the people watching the live were getting frustrated right along with me in real time, and the documentation failed almost immediately. And that stream is still up if you want to go check that out for yourself. Now, I understand that some people love Nextcloud. They use it and it works for them, and they'll defend it to the death. And I'm not here to tell those people that they're wrong, but I'm also not going to pretend that I've had a different experience than what I've had. When I'm thinking about adding something new to my setup, I want it to just work. I want minimal configuration, I don't want to fight documentation, but I don't want my handheld either. So, as a recent side quest, I built a fully functional news aggregator. It scans sources, scores stories, ranks them by video potential, and pushes highlights directly to my Discord. And it only took me 6 prompts to build, and it actually could have been fewer if I'd been more thoughtful about my prompting. And I built it using today's video sponsor, Abacus.ai. Now, before you think this is just another AI wrapper, let me show you what's actually going on under the hood, because this is different. Head over to chatllm.abacus.ai and you've got every major model in one place. Claude, GPT, Gemini, Grok, DeepSeek, all accessible without juggling 5 different subscriptions. There's even a Route LLM feature that automatically picks the best model for whatever you're asking. So you're always getting the right tool for the right job without having to think about it. And then there's Deep Agent, which is what I used. This thing can build complete websites, mobile apps, AI pipelines, and yes, full applications like the news aggregator you're looking at right now. 6 prompts from zero to a live, filterable, Discord-connected app. And all of this is just $10 a month. Not per model, but for all of it. If you're already paying for ChatGPT Plus or Claude Pro separately, this pays for itself in one day. Be sure to check out chatllm.abacus.ai. The link's in the video description and in the pinned comment below. I actually had Nextcloud set up and running for several months early on in my self-hosting journey, and honestly, things were going well. I was using it for everything, like phone backups, notes, and documents. It was the centerpiece of my home lab at the time, and I was genuinely bought in on why people like it so much. Then one day I tried to log into my Nextcloud account and the login page just didn't come up. And I still don't know if it was a bad update or a system crash. All I know is that Nextcloud was supposed to load and it didn't. And I tried restarting Nextcloud and nothing changed. And at the time I didn't have the knowledge or the wherewithal to figure out why. And then it got worse. My data was sitting in Docker volumes instead of mapped volumes, and I didn't know how to get into it. Remember, this is still very early in my self-hosting journey. So I wasn't just dealing with a broken app. I was also dealing with a broken app sitting on top of the data that I couldn't reach. And I spent a few hours trying to figure it out, and I got frustrated and I got overwhelmed, and eventually I just shut down. I accepted my losses and walked away, and those losses were real. I had months of phone photos that existed nowhere else, notes and documents that I had trusted Nextcloud with, also with no other backup. It was all just gone. And look, this part is on me, and I know that. I didn't have a good backup solution in place, and I didn't know what I was doing with volumes at the time. But losing that much to something that I felt completely out of control with sent me down a path of just not wanting to deal with Nextcloud anymore. And beyond just that one experience, Nextcloud seems to need a lot of extra handholding just to stay healthy. There's extra configuration that has to be done manually, and things that Nextcloud could just implement by default, but they don't. And people have written elaborate guides covering all of that, and those guides are genuinely helpful, but the fact that they need to exist at all, I think, is part of the problem. Why does running this properly require a research project? So what I actually want is a self-hosted file server with browser-based file editing and access to my files from anywhere the server is available. Simple enough, right? I recently did a video on EuroOffice, and for that I needed to test it on a file server, so I attached it to Seafile, and the setup went fine. but the comments had a recurring theme, people taking issue with Seafile's origins, and I didn't want that noise to be the conversation every time I mentioned it, so I kept looking. So then I tried ownCloud, and getting it set up was pretty straightforward. Just ownCloud, MariaDB, and Redis in a Docker Compose, and adding Collabora wasn't bad either, but I did hit a snag early on. After I installed ownCloud, I installed a couple of plugins to add some functionality, and one of those was the Collabora plugin. And almost immediately, I started getting notifications telling me that one of the plugins I'd installed required an enterprise license, which, okay, fine. But the notification wouldn't tell me which plugin was the problem. It just said, one of your installed plugins requires an enterprise license. And to me, that's a frustrating way to handle that. It's not a hard thing to say that plugin X requires an enterprise license, but instead I'm just left guessing which one it is. And look, I understand that most people will probably install one plugin at a time, but that's typically not how I roll. So having it explicitly tell me which plugin could have been a huge help to me. So anyway, I decided to find out what an enterprise license was actually going to cost me. And I spent probably 30 minutes searching on the website, on Google, everywhere I could think to look. And what I found was a start a 30-day free trial button that took me to a contact form with no pricing anywhere. And I have a strict policy of, if I have to give you my contact information before I can find out how much something costs, I'm not going to give you my contact information because I don't care if I can afford it or not. It's a bad sales tactic and I won't participate in it. So I just closed the tab. Now look, this was all on my testing server, and when I did a fresh install on my production server, the error message never came back. So it was probably something wrong that I did on the first install process, which was equal parts relief and frustration. Like, I was glad it was working, but I was annoyed that I just spent 30 minutes chasing a problem that may have never actually existed. But once I got past that, everything came together pretty cleanly. ownCloud handles the files, Collabora handles the file editing, and I can get to all of it through a browser from just about anywhere. And setting up Collabora to work with ownCloud was surprisingly straightforward. I added the Collabora service directly into my existing ownCloud Docker Compose file, brought them up together, set up some domain names for both of the services through Cloudflare Tunnels, and then just added the Collabora URL inside the ownCloud dashboard. And that was it. It just started working. So one thing worth flagging if you're planning on going the Cloudflare Tunnel route, I believe the free plan imposes a 100 megabyte maximum upload file size limit. And for my current usage, that hasn't been an issue, but depending on what you're storing and uploading, it could be a real limitation worth knowing about before you commit to using Cloudflare Tunnels. That said, if you're using another reverse proxy, you're probably fine. And using Collabora in the browser genuinely feels good. It's like using Google Docs or Sheets. It's familiar, it's responsive, everything is where you'd expect it to be. And I've opened documents and text files and spreadsheets without any issues. There are probably some limitations on the spreadsheet side compared to Google Sheets, but honestly, that doesn't affect me since most of my spreadsheet usage is simple budgeting just a couple of times a month. Like, I don't need pivot tables or thousands of rows. For what I actually use it for, this is working great. But here's the thing that actually won me over. ownCloud has built-in cron jobs, and they run every 15 minutes by default out of the box with no setup required. And that might sound like a small thing, but it was one of my biggest ongoing frustrations with Nextcloud. You have to manually configure cron jobs yourself just to keep the app functioning properly. It's a basic maintenance requirement that Nextcloud just hands back to you. Maybe this has changed since the last time I tried Nextcloud, but ownCloud handles it automatically out of the box, and I love that. It's little quality of life things like this that really shows what a project thinks about its users, at least as far as I'm concerned. And there's genuinely something satisfying about having all of that running locally. Like, I've always understood why Nextcloud users were so devoted to their setups. Having all of your files and documents on your own hardware and not handing it off to Google is definitely something to be proud of. But my issue was never with the overall concept. It was with how much work Nextcloud required just to keep the lights on. ownCloud gives me that same feeling of ownership without the maintenance overhead, and that's the biggest difference for me. Now, that said, ownCloud obviously isn't perfect, and my biggest complaint is the marketplace has no search functionality. Like, there's no way to search for plugins in a plugin marketplace, and I genuinely don't understand how that gets shipped. And there's no built-in dark mode, which is a preferential thing for me, but I know that there are some styling options if you wanted to go that route. But overall, that's been my journey over the last week or so, from wanting a simple file server with document editing to actually having one. So is this going to make everyone happy? Probably not. And I know some of you are going to have thoughts about this setup, and I would love to hear them. I'd also love to know if you're running Nextcloud or ownCloud. Have you tried ownCloud? I would genuinely love to know how it's been working for you. Definitely let me know in the comment section down below. But with all of that said, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me here today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.